Good morning and welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today we are gonna meet Victoria Aveyard. Whoa! I am about to leave for the venue to go to the signing and I'm really excited. I'll see you guys later.
Join me in welcoming the one and only Victoria Aveyard.
So my best writing advice to aspiring writers before you do anything, you have to finish your first draft. Another author who I was on tour with, she goes like, you can't sell a book unless you've written a book. So it seems pretty obvious, but it is very, very difficult to finish. Red Queen is the first book I ever finished writing. So the number one thing, write the end at the end. Just get there however you can. Don't edit yourself too much on the way there because you can get really stuck in the quicksand of self-editing chapters as you go. So just sort of forge ahead, give yourself the benefit of the doubt and be like, yeah, I know it's a rough draft, but you still want to get to the end of it. And then in terms of writing action sequences and sort of set pieces and high octane moments, those are my favorite part. Those are the parts that's a little bit easier for me because I like writing explosions and I like writing battles and I love choreographing them out. For me, it's really fun to take a scrap of paper and sort of draw out basically a map of what the battle looks like and then just write it in my head. I would love if someone could tell me how to write romance and like romantic scenes better because those are my weakness. I definitely think it's harder to write a kiss than it is to write a long battle sequence. I guess my advice for writing stuff like that is read stuff like that and see how your favorite authors do it or your favorite filmmakers do it and just sort of internalize the language of those scenes and sort of figure out how to communicate as visually, tonally, and quickly as possible because while it'd be great to describe every little moment of a battle, then you're writing 100 pages that equals to 10 minutes in real time, so you have to balance that out a little. Actually, what I come at first, before plot or character, is usually world or an image. So for Red Queen, I started with the image of a teenage girl in an arena about to be executed. And instead of being killed, she kills her executioner with lightning. And I thought, that's really cool. I would love to read that story or see that story. I'm going to explore it. And then from there, the question I always ask is, what world does this take place in? So I had to create a world where that person and that image could be real. And then with all my other stories that are still kind of flying around in my head, it's usually the world that comes to me first. So, for example, the first screenplay I ever wrote was a zombie western. So it was like a zombie apocalypse breaks out in the middle of the old American West. And I thought, that's a cool world. What's the story? Who are the characters? So I start on a very macro, big level and get narrower and narrower. So for me, the most important part, though, of course, is character. Again, I'm more of a world plot person, and character is a little bit more difficult for me, but obviously character is what makes you stay with a story. So you could write the most amazing, fantastic world, but if the people are boring or unreal, you're not going to want to read it. So it's very important to have characters who readers can either relate to or understand, even if they're villains, just something that they can hook onto and really tap into with their characters. When I first signed for Red Queen, I was signed for a trilogy, so 3 books. And I didn't know where it was going when I wrote the first book. I just knew it was a series, so they said, let's start with 3 and see where it goes. And I said, okay, I think I can tell this story in 3. Right now, I outlined and I'm writing the 3rd book, and I realized I can't get to that ending in 1 book. And if I did try, it would either be really, really rushed or a really big book that was kind of garbage. So we went back to Harper and said, I think I need 1 more book. And they asked, like, well, can you do 5 instead of 4? And I said, no. So it's not extending or stretching, it's just doing what the story is requiring as I'm understanding more and more of the pieces and how the characters react. Because you can write on the page, this happens, this happens, this happened, and say it's going to take 100 pages to write. But it's up to the characters. If they want to take a detour, they will. It's super weird when they do, and you're like, what's happening here? But yeah, so it's just doing what the story needs and what I can now feel the story's pace is. Universal Studios has the film option on Red Queen, and as of right now, everything that we would want to be happening is happening. It's very exciting. I've read several drafts of the screenplay. The writer of the screenplay her name is Jennifer Hutchison. She wrote for Breaking Bad. She writes on Better Call Saul now. She's so talented and really fantastic and just a great person. Like immediately after she got the job, she contacted me and said, "Can we have lunch? I'd love to talk to you." And that's sort of been the pattern with the film people, as they've been very inclusive of me. I've met all the producers. I've met the director. We have Elizabeth Banks signed on to direct. It's really cool. They've all been very clear. We know you also work in this industry. We get that you're an asset and someone that we can use. We want you included. We want you happy. So they've been very great, and I know pretty much all that's going on as of right now. My top 3 fantasies would have to be Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien. That one's always going to be my watershed core inspiration. I read those when I was 11, and I carried that book around for 2 years until it fell apart, and everyone was like, "Oh, there's Victoria with her battered Lord of the Rings." I loved that book so much. Also, Harry Potter, obviously. J.K. Rowling, total hero. I started reading those books when I was 9 years old, and the last book came out when I was 17. So I honestly felt like I went to Hogwarts even though I didn't get my letter. And I totally pity any generation before or after mine, because I was there. It was me. And then the third fantasy world and story that I absolutely love and had a lot of influence on Red Queen in particular was the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin. Just the way that he twists fantasy tropes, but also is very clear about there being no antagonists or protagonists. No one's good, no one's evil. It's all shades of gray morality. That was really inspiring to me in writing Red Queen, and I tried to do a bit of the same, of characters who are bad but make good choices, or are good but make bad choices, and just the whole run of the mill. I think it makes for really realistic characters in very extraordinary worlds, which just helps you kind of ground yourself and appreciate it more.
Hi Victoria.
Hi.
So like you, I ended up going to film school.
Yay!
Yay! But I'm also in love with books. What advantages, if any, did your screenwriting background give you in penning a novel, and which would you say is easier and why?
I learned pretty much every storytelling trick that I know from film school. It's just a really, for me, a comprehensive and highly internalized way of telling a story, because 3-act, 8-sequence structure was so hammered into me in school. It's very easy now for me to pick out an idea and then sort of say, okay, this is the first act, this is the second act. I get a little wonky in the second act, and this is the third act, and this is how we break down the story. And it means that I hate outlining, but I make myself do it, but I don't have to outline that much because I have it sort of in my head already, and it's internalized like the bones of the story. From film, I also learned pacing is totally key. Pacing, you want to get into your scenes as fast as possible and get out of your scenes as fast as possible. Escalation is the name of the game. Every single scene must up the ante. So when I'm writing sequels, now I'm like, oh my god, I really need to outdo myself, and I don't know how. And now when I'm planning books, there are times when I'm like, no, I can't do that yet. I have to wait because I'll never be able to top that, so that has to go in the end. Also, knowing your audience is very, very important. My first job before anything else is I am an entertainer. I am here to take you out of your world and put you in mine and sort of strap you into the roller coaster. So I'm putting on a show, and it's your show. And so I need to know what you like, what you need, what you're subconsciously are wanting from a story, what twists and turns should come next. So that's another thing that film really taught me. In terms of which one I prefer, I will tell you that I prefer whatever one I'm not working on at the time. So since right now I'm writing the third book, I'll be like, oh, I wish I could write a screenplay right now, because screenplays are so immediate and so visceral. They really make you aware of language because they're only 120 pages tops. They're like 1/6 the size of a regular book in terms of word count. So you have to be really careful and really know what you're saying and use connotation very well. And it's really good screenplays. If you could get your hands on some good scripts, it's poetry, man. Because just the way that they paint pictures with 3 or 4 words, amazing. But then on the other side with novels, you do get the room to actually paint a picture, and you can describe what a room looks like. And when I first came back to novel writing from writing screenplays, I was like, oh my god, I can talk about what this place looks like and what it smells like and all that. and what these people are thinking, which are not things you can really put into a screenplay unless it's in a voiceover, which is like whatever. And then I think you also get a lot more time with your characters. You do get to delve deeper into their head, especially in Red Queen, because it's a first person, so I get to, we get to understand what she's thinking, which is definitely not what you can do in most screenplays.
Thank you.
The quiet scenes are always hard for me, sort of the regrouping after something bad has happened. In Red Queen, I'm trying to remember what was a really hard one. The entire middle of that book was very difficult for me because a lot of it is like build up and it's a lot of learning the world. And there were times I was like, can someone just have a fight, please? So I had to put in little fights. But also the middle of that book was also just really hard for me because I was writing that long before I thought it was garbage and I didn't know where it was going and I had no idea if it would ever see the light of day, let alone be published around the world. So there was a lot of just self-doubt in that book, so that made it hard. And then come Glass Sword, I at least had a little bit of a cushion now because I had a book deal, but Red Queen hadn't come out yet, so I had no idea how things were going to land. I guess, again, besides just the middle of that book, a really difficult scene is a scene to write after a certain character has died and everyone's really upset, and the main character is just acting like a total lunatic, and we have several characters like scream, tell her you're acting like a lunatic, and it's completely her low point, which by the way is where you end your second act, is the lowest point in the character's emotional journey of that story. Just a cheat sheet there. But yeah, that was a hard scene to write because it was so emotional and so small compared to the rest of it, and that's not my wheelhouse. A lot of the names came out of thin air, but I wanted to put sort of a Roman spin on them because I think the Empire sort of spice felt really nice for them and really fit. So, for example, Cal, his last name is Calor, which means heat in Latin and Spanish. So that was pretty easy. I did a lot of like Google English to Latin translations of like water and ice and what those things would look like. Or I would just spin on words like Osanos is the house that controls water, so it sounds a little like ocean. And then for the abilities, I definitely went on Wikipedia and just like looked at the list that there is of superhuman powers, which is actually really cool. And I would go through mostly for background characters and be like, okay, this one I want to use, this one I want to use, this one I want to use. But then the main characters, I would always kind of choose an ability that either serviced the plot, so like obviously Alara had to be a mind reader for the way that the plot goes, or to sort of reflect their character. So for Evangeline, her controlling metal and like always wearing needles and stuff was really cool and really indicative of who she is. And the same with Mare, her being like a lightning controller. She's definitely a storm in a little person, so that was cool to personify that. Red Queen 3, I can't say what the title is because we're still not we're still not set on a title actually. It starts immediately where Glass Sword leaves off, so same kind of format. And if you've read Glass Sword, there are a couple of characters who are not in that book very much, but based on the way that Glass Sword ends, obviously they will be in the next one a lot more. After Red Queen, I'll probably do some more screenplays because I have that itch, and those are great to write and a good palate cleanser, and it's fun. It kind of keeps you on your toes and keeps the muscles working. When you switch from medium to medium. I also really want to continue with writing fantasy and genre. Those are my tastes. Maybe I'll get that good enough that I can do historical fiction because I love historical fiction. But the research really, really scares me, which is one of the reasons I write fantasy is because I can make up the research myself. So it's cheating. But yeah, I have after Red Queen, the 4th book, I'm signed with HarperCollins for one more novel, and I'm like brainstorming on what I want that to be and what sandbox I want to play in next.
It's a zombie western.
When I created her, I was just like, this is going to be awesome. I hope people like it. Because, again, my first job is to entertain you guys, and any theme or moral comes in later and usually bleeds in from me. But I'm a feminist. I'm a young, modern woman, so I think it was just my natural inclination to write a woman who or write a story that is feminist and like treats women equally and all that radical stuff. But yeah, for her, it was just writing a character who I respected, which means she's a strong, opinionated, complicated person. And that doesn't necessarily mean making her perfect either. I love her flaws more than I love her sort of pros. It's not completely vital to the story. It's obviously window dressing, and it's not something that's going to affect the main plot, because the main plot is more about the rebellion and Mare than it is about what happened to make people have superpowers. But it's definitely the result of like nuclear warfare and mutation through radiation a couple thousand years before this world happened. I naturally really like genre mashups. Obviously, zombie western. I'm kind of a kitchen sink writer, in that I throw in all the stuff that I like, because I'm not going to write a story if I don't like it. I don't get that. So yeah, it just became, I wanted to write this fantasy. Okay, how did this world happen? People have superpowers. How did they get them? Oh, it's a mutation from like a nuclear warfare situation. Okay, so then it's far into the future of our world. Okay, what would that look like? How did this become this way? So it's like dystopia is sort of the background, but then the fantasy kind of comes in the power structure and sort of the monarchy, but then it's sci-fi because there's superpowers and all this going on, and they have some sort of technology. It was really cool to sort of paint with different brushes and take pieces of all these genres that I love and kind of put them together in my own personal way. Thank you, first of all, because a lot of people have a problem with her being, you know, imperfect and say she's a bitch or whatever. And well, she's had a lot happen to her. Can we give her a break? She's 17. But definitely more of her emotional journey. Glass Sword is definitely the book where she sort of wobbles and can definitely fall to not a very good place, and has her moments where you're like, uh-oh, I don't know where she's going with this, and is this sort of her anti-hero moment. And then the third book is definitely her realizing, you know, she's not the center of the universe, which I think a lot of YA books get a bad rap because they're first person, so obviously when you're reading it, like, why is this person always the center of the universe? It's like, well, they're telling you the story. For her, it's definitely realizing that the wounds that were inflicted on her in Red Queen and Glass Sword are always going to be there, but she needs to move past them. So the first book, she trusts the wrong people. The second book, she trusts nobody. The third book, she's learning to trust who she can and trust herself, which is the most important thing. When she loses trust in herself, and the second book is when she starts making really bad decisions. So the third book is her sort of getting that back and starting to believe in herself, but not to the extent that's unhealthy. Oh boy. Like a firing squad. Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you for liking Red Queen and Glass Sword enough that National Bookstore wanted to bring me out here. I've had a really fantastic time. I never ever expected anything like this. I didn't know this was a thing, and I hope that I get invited back one day.
You can live here.
Yay!
We just met Victoria Aveyard. That's it for today's video. Bye guys.